Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm Sal Interdonato. Very special guest today is Josh Holden. Josh played football and baseball at West Point and also went on to play some minor league baseball with the Reds. We're going to talk to Josh about his experiences and his journeys. And first off, welcome to the podcast, Josh. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely, Sal. It's been a long time. It's 2014, right?
2014 at the Army Alumni Golf Outing, the Friday
You
night.
have an age today.
Yeah, they didn't even have one last year. That's always a date that I circle on my calendar. I'd love to go there and talk to former players about what they're up to, what they think about the program, and what their experiences were like. You can follow us on blackknightnation.com. We have all this. We have stories up on the coaching changes and departures, recruiting, and you can get us on podcast everywhere. Rate, subscribe, and write us up if you like us. If you don't like us, give us some clues on what you would like to have in the future on this podcast. But this is a great podcast, Josh. Really appreciate it. You were a rare athlete at West Point to do two major sports at West Point and try to juggle them at once. First off, how did you get to West Point? What was the recruiting like for you, and were you recruited for baseball or football at West Point, or both?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hudson, Ohio, which is about a half hour south of Cleveland, and happened to have a decent senior year, and kind of got lightly recruited by some MAC schools, some Division III schools in Ohio. And West Point approached me. Initially, I didn't have really any interest in going to a military academy. I honestly, the first letter I ever got, I threw it in the trash. And but it was fortuitous that the coach at the time was Coach Sutton, and the guy who recruited me was Mike Dietzel, who's the running backs coach at the time. They aggressively pursued me. They showed me, a lot of great things that West Point is, and the more that I did research, the more it was a great fit for me. And a funny story: I took two recruiting trips. I went to Dartmouth, and I went to West Point. And Dartmouth was my first recruiting trip. And those guys were good. They were fun. They were nice guys. And I was like, yeah, I'm really excited about this. This is, it seems like it'd be a good fit. And then I took my recruiting trip to West Point, and I don't know if you remember Reno Ferree.
Yes.
So Reno hosted me, and Reno now is the tight ends coach at Syracuse. And I was hanging around those guys, and I was just like, man, I want to be like them. They were just the baddest dudes that I'd ever seen in my life, and that kind of clinched it for me. But it was just very fortuitous that when it turned out like that.
Yeah, no doubt. When you get to West Point, first off, how does football go for you first? What was life like on the football team for you? Just kind of working your way up. I think there was a coaching change while you were there too, right? Or no?
Yeah. So, obviously the first experience as a West Point cadet playing football, you get your teeth kicked in pretty good. I think I was a 170-pound plebe going in, and I probably came out of Beast Barracks at about 160. So going to fall practice after 6 weeks of basically being starved, wasn't the funnest experience, but it turned out fine, obviously.
Yeah.
But to talk about the coaching change, so my plebe year, Coach Sutton was still there, and then he got fired after Navy that year. I think that was 1999, and then in 2000, that's when Todd Berry got hired.
How did life change for you when Todd Berry got hired, as far as, because he put in obviously more of a pro style offense, and back when Sutton was there, you're still running option based, right? I mean, was life different for you as a running back when Berry took over?
Yeah, good question. So our running back room, my freshman year, there was probably 50 people in it, and 30 of them were plebes. So it was standing room only, and it was just ridiculous because obviously you had two running backs, on the wings in the wishbone, and then you had the fullback. So I was sort of lost in the sea of dudes.
Yeah.
And sophomore year, when Todd came in, I really concentrated on trying to get stronger and faster. And, fortunately I was, able to kind of make the final cut. And I don't know if you remember Mike Wallace, but he was the starting running back when I was a sophomore, when he was a senior, and he was pretty good. So those are some tough shoes to follow there.
That Louisville overtime game, right? That's kind of when you think of Mike Wallace, you think of that Louisville overtime game that he had. He was he was spectacular in that game. So when does baseball come into play at West Point? How does baseball fit in, so to speak?
Yeah, so I played, obviously I played in high school as well, and got a pretty hard look from the New York Yankees to, come play for them right out of high school, and decided, to go to play West Point or play football at West Point instead. And my freshman year, my plebe year, I decided not to play baseball, just because, the academics, the military stuff, football, was pretty difficult to juggle all that. But my sophomore year, some of my high school baseball coaches came to a game, and they happened to be kind of milling around on Luskwood Reservoir, and they knew who Joe Solano was, who was the baseball coach at the time. And the coach that flagged him down was actually a pretty well-known high school coach in Ohio. So Joe knew who he was, and he basically said, "Hey, you got a kid who can play Division I baseball that's playing football right now." And so I just kind of went up to Coach Solano. I was like, "Hey, maybe I can play some baseball." And I think I went to one practice. He's like, "Yeah, you can play." So that was what happened.
Now, you played right away your sophomore year, or now?
Yeah. I was lucky, man. I got put right in the lineup, led off, and played center field, and didn't leave that position my entire career, which was nice.
I'm trying to think of that time. Was the program, under Solano, was just starting to take, because he had some really successful years in his tenure here. What were your seasons like with the baseball team? How much success did you guys experience?
Yeah, we were pretty much a 500 ball club at that point. He had just gotten hired. I think what was his name? Who was before him? What was his name? Roberts.
Dan Roberts. Yeah, Dan
Roberts. Yep. So he had just sort of taken that job from Dan, and it took Coach Solano a couple of years to kind of get some recruits in, but I was sort of at the tail end of getting some of those guys that would become impact players. Actually, I don't know if you remember Skylar Williamson. Yeah, he was a very good player. He actually lives in Austin too, so we've been able to connect, which has been really cool.
Awesome. You look at the baseball. They had yourself. I think you started it all pretty much as far as talent, and then you had him, Nick Hill, Mylan Dinga, or a couple guys that come to mind that got some minor league. Skylar got a minor league opportunity too. And just how did you juggle football and baseball? Because you have your spring practices and stuff like that. You were playing baseball during the spring, or did you get a chance to have some spring football practices under your belt?
Yeah, man, it's amazing what a 21-year-old body can put up with. I was, at the time I would play. We had worked out a sort of an arrangement that I would attend, a set number of spring practices. So I think I did maybe 4 or 5 during those years. And, whenever I had a baseball game during that day, I didn't have to practice, which was nice.
Yeah.
But, I think the coaches had communicated with each other and found a way to make it work. And it did, which was great.
Yeah, because you think about, they always talk about how hard West Point is, right, academically, and then you throw in the military, then you throw in 2 Division I sports. How do you think, how did, I'm not saying you program yourself, but how were you able to get through that? Or was it just playing those sports? Because some people say playing, going to the stadium or going to the baseball field is the best part of the day. How were you able to balance that stuff out?
Yeah, I think the fact that football was a fall sport and baseball was a spring sport was very helpful. It gave me kind of an in-between period to kind of reset and get my academics back in order. I wasn't the best student in the world, but I found a way to make it work. And the thing that is really great about West Point is that, if you show effort and if you want to succeed, they will help you do that. If you don't, they will not help you. I tell kids that all the time, that if you want to succeed there, they will find a way to help you succeed. And I was definitely in that camp.
Do you have a favorite baseball memory at West Point?
Favorite baseball memory? Yeah. So we were playing Navy. I think it was my senior year, and I think we were tied at the bottom of the ninth, and I was in center field, and kid hit a fly ball, and then the sun was right in my eyes, and I totally just missed it, and I couldn't see, and so we lost the game because the kid had I think bases were loaded, and so I felt pretty bad about that, but what do you do?
I don't know. Coach Sadolano wasn't too happy about that after the game, or how did that go over?
I mean, what do you do? I mean, it's one of those things. You make an error. I didn't mean to drop it. I didn't mean that I couldn't see it. You can't. I mean, you can get on a kid for mental errors, but you can't get on them for physical ones.
Yeah, you look at Michie Stadium. They talk about how iconic Michie Stadium is, but you go to Doubleday Field. I mean, it's unique in itself, right? Especially for a college venue for Division I baseball, right? It's a smaller seated stadium, and then you have the libraries behind the outfield wall, and supposedly Babe Ruth or some guys hit the library on a fly. Who knows? I mean, there's so much history to that field too, right? Did that feel pretty special playing at Doubleday?
Yeah, man, it was a great place. I mean, we had great staff. Billy I forget Billy's last name, but he was our groundskeeper. Did an amazing job all the time. Just had that field as pristine as could be. And having Colin Hall in left field, and then they got the new library there now. They didn't have that when I was playing. But it was neat to just kind of come out of your room and walk to the field and play a baseball game. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think there's hedges there too of some. I don't know. It's pretty. I mean, like you said, you talk about Michie Stadium, but Doubleday Field is another that there's a lot of history to that venue too. So, what's your favorite football moment? Would you say?
Favorite football moment. We were playing Boston College my sophomore year, and it was like the second game of the year. I think it was our first home game. And my mom and dad were flying in from Ohio to see the game. And somehow their flight got delayed. I think they were flying in the White Plains or something. And they missed the first quarter. And, I was just a plebe. I was a sophomore, and I had never been on the field yet. And, Mike Wallace was still the starter. And I think we were driving. We got down to like the 21-yard line or something, and Coach Smith, who's my position coach, said, "Hey, you're going in." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So, and it's funny because Josh Gonzalez tells this story all the time. He's actually part of this story too. Chad Jenkins was a quarterback. He called a 48 speed, which is an option play, and so Josh he tells me this now, but he was looking at me like, who's this guy? When I was in the huddle. And so Chad, we break the huddle. Chad goes and, barks out the signals. And Josh was pulling on that play. Josh Gonzalez was. And he found the corner and just absolutely buried him. And I just kind of stepped around him and ran in the end zone. And it was actually my first carry that I'd ever had in college, and I scored a touchdown. And my mom and dad were in the cab listening to the game when that happened. So that was pretty funny.
Wow, that's something else. I mean, no doubt, great story. We're going to talk about how you got a chance, how you were able to get a chance to play baseball for the Reds in a second. But first, we want to thank our sponsors, Higher Echelon, who are first sponsors of the Black Knight Nation podcast. And here's a quick Here's a quick read from Higher Echelon. Don't you wish you had some secrets to help you get an edge on your business competition? Wouldn't it be great if someone could solve technology and personal challenges at your company that you don't have the time and expertise to fix on your own? There is a solution. Higher Echelon is a world-class consulting firm that trains employees in sports psychology secrets that drastically improve work performance. Founder Dr. Joe Ross is retired Army who played and later coached for the cadets and puts that experience to use for clients. Higher Echelon helps organizations shave hundreds of hours off work time and save and make more money by walking them through technology transformations, including organization-wide change management. You don't have to go at it alone, and you don't have to stay stuck. Higher Echelon is your go-to trusted partner for organized excellence. Go to higherechelon.com. That's HIGHERECHELON.com or call 866-469-9945 today to take your company to the next level. Go Higher and go Army. So that's our sponsor, Higher Echelon. We thank Joe Ross for sponsoring this podcast. And another former Army football player, Josh, and a coach. And we're gonna have his story. We're gonna have him come on and tell his story down the road. Going back to your story about so once your athletic career is over at West Point, that now is your time to serve in the military, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was that? I know from talking to you previously, you did do a couple tours in Iraq. Was that before your baseball opportunity? Were you doing it? Did you do your tours before, after West Point, before pro baseball started for you?
Yeah, so I deployed to Iraq twice after my baseball career. So after I stopped playing, I got stationed in Fort Hood with the 1st Cavalry Division and did 2 deployments with them.
They talk about anytime I hear about recruiting, the pitch is always, when you get out, you have a job, you have a job, you have a salary, you have a future. What's it like going right from the academy right to your active duty time? I know you get a little bit of break, but you have your training also too, your bullet training. What was that like to do that pretty, within a small period of time? So
yeah, I think it's really unique because I can't really think of any other situation besides Navy and Air Force where everyone that you graduate with and all your teammates are all doing the same thing, which I think is part of the reason why there's such a strong bond between academy guys, that we're all pretty much doing Army stuff for about 10 years or so. And so it was cool, like to be able to stay with the people that I grew up with, essentially, and to be able to serve our country. So it was fun, man. That's good.
When you're serving in Iraq, are you serving alongside some of your football teammates? Are you able to connect with them while you're out there too? Are you kind of part of the team, so to speak?
Yeah, you kind of run into guys that are in adjacent units. If they're not in your unit, if you travel, you'll see people and you're like, oh, what are you doing here? And so it's kind of cool to catch up because as time goes by, as you're aware, people kind of peel off and have families and kids and all that kind of stuff. So
no doubt. So how does the Reds happen? It was an open tryout. Talk me through how that whole situation happened and how you were able to get an opportunity with the Reds.
Yeah, man, it's kind of a wild story. I had a mentor who we'll call Deep Throat. And I say that because he had some contacts at the Pentagon. He had some friends there. And he was a full-board colonel at West Point at the time and was a huge baseball fan, played at TCU, played with a guy named Freddie Benavides at TCU who played in the Reds organization or played for the Reds for a long time. And I think now it might be the 3rd base coach there. So he's been there forever. And so he called Freddie. He's like, hey, Freddie, I got a guy who, I think you might like. And Freddie's like, okay, well, we have an open tryout up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Send him up there. We'll see what happens. So Deep Throat says, "Hey man, I want you to go to Tulsa and go to this tryout." And at that time, I was stationed at Fort Hood, or not Fort Hood, but Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and didn't really give baseball any thought really at that point. And so, I kind of pulled my glove out of mothballs and found a bat, and there was a baseball field at Cameron University. I remember just buying a tee from Walmart and just taking some swings. And I went to the tryout and did really well, and I think there were probably 150, 200 people that attended that tryout, and they signed me.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know. But, and so I'm like, they're like, "Hey, we want you to go play in the Gulf Coast League and do that." I'm like, "Well, I don't know yet," because I'm still an active duty Army officer. So I go back to Deep Throat. I'm like, "Hey man, they want to sign me. Like, what do I do?" And he's like, "All right, here's what I need you to do. Be a great officer, be a great artillery officer, and let me talk to some people." And long story short, I took my entire leave that I had, and I went like 30 days in the hole to go play in the Gulf Coast League. And I was fortunate because my first battery commander, his name is Wyatt Cutler, and Wyatt was a football player as well, and was totally, understanding and helped kind of grease the skids to make that happen. And it was great. I mean, I had a really good summer. I think I hit like 348. And at that point, Deep Throat was still kind of working behind the scenes to create a program to let me do this more permanently. And so, long story short, we were able to create at that time what was called the alternative service option, which allowed West Point athletes that had the ability to do that play sports. And I think I was the first person to do that. And I feel really proud that I was able to kind of I don't want to say pave the way, but kind of be the first person to benefit from that program. And now West Point athletes playing professionally is like no big deal. I mean, you got the tackle on the Steelers, you got McNary, you got all kinds of people that are doing great stuff that were much better athletes than I was. So,
well, let's not go there, Josh. They didn't play two sports Division I. Yeah, you have four guys in the NFL right now, right? You have Ali, you have Brett Toth and Elijah Riley at the Eagles, and you have Cole Christensen with the Chargers, and Josh McNary played for the Colts and the Jaguars, and now it's they can go directly. They don't have to wait at all. You had 2 years of military service before you.
So the way that they structured it at that time, I had to serve 2 years active duty, and actually the day that 2-year thing came up, I went to Billings, Montana to go play for the Billings Mustangs. At that point, the deal was 2 years active duty, and I had to pay back a prorated share of my West Point education, which they valued like $100,000.
Wow.
Fortunately, I didn't have to pay the whole thing. They were gracious enough to waive it when I went back on active duty. But hopefully they don't make those kids do that anymore. That's a pretty large burden.
Yeah, I'm not sure what goes on there. I think that after they are done pursuing their pro dreams, they can go and they can go back. I think they go back and serve? Do they do reserve work? Who knows? I know like Brett Toth is still involved pretty much with the military, even though he is playing tackle for the Eagles. I'm sure Cole Christensen and Ali's done a lot of work outside of the football in the community for military families. So and there's also an MLS soccer player now getting a chance. I think there's a couple hockey players out there now too. So but back then, I mean, I know that you didn't want to be known as kind of a trailblazer, so to speak. But I mean, it was something that kind of that moved things forward, at least, right? Because when you first got there, that wasn't an option, really. So
and there was always two camps. It was the camp that, hey, this is a once in a lifetime thing. This is something that could be a benefit to the Army. This is something that could be a benefit to West Point. And then the other camp was, well, taxpayer dollars are paying for this. This kid should be, serving as an artillery officer, like, we had trained him to do. And obviously I'm in the first camp because I think that, having kids that graduate from West Point and are able to play professional sports, I mean, who be it from us to say no to that? I mean, that's ridiculous. That's everything that's everything America stands for, is to let a kid chase his dream. And the benefit that the Army gets from that, I think, is far outweighs losing a lieutenant for a few years that will eventually go back on active duty. So I mean, it's a no-brainer in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your 4 years in the Reds organization, right? I always ask, even when it comes down to playing in college, when you're playing college football, who was like the best player? Who was a guy that you might have faced? Was there anybody that you faced that went on to be a name in MLB? Is there anybody that you have a good memory off of in your minor league career?
Yeah, I'll talk football first. The best player I ever played against, I ever saw on any team, was Lyle Weaver. I don't know if you remember him. He just passed away a few months ago, and I had the really distinct pleasure and opportunity to see him, a few weeks before he passed. And he was my hero. He was the best player that I'd ever seen in my life. I was scared to death of him when I was playing, even when I was, a sophomore. And just an unbelievable guy. And I think you probably have felt sort of the impact that he has had. I'm sure you've heard about kind of the people that have come forward and say, yeah, he was the best I ever saw. So I want to mention that. Professionally, for baseball, the best players that I played with, I played with them actually for a couple years straight, were Johnny Cueto and Jay Bruce. Jay came about halfway through the season that I was in Billings, Montana. He got signed as an 18-year-old, and he got like a $2 million sign bonus or something, and proceeded to immediately take my spot out of the lineup, which, understandable. And then Johnny Cueto, they signed him out of the Dominican, I think, and obviously had a very long and successful career.
Wow, those are two names. Certainly in the Reds organization, those are two names that Reds fans will definitely know. Do you have a memory, a good memory of your minor league career? A story, because there's always good minor league baseball stories, right? Whether you're traveling or just any. I mean, I love talking to minor league players, current and past, about their stories about trying to make it. Because it's one of the tougher out of all the four sports, right? I think it's the toughest, the four major sports, to make it in.
Yeah, I'll sort of talk on the entire experience. It was, I had created some really good buzz and momentum, my first year, and that year I only played, I think, maybe 40 games, and the season for minor league, the full season in the minor league is 140 games. So I kind of got a little bit of humble pie, going through a full season. And as kind of my career went on, it became very apparent, that I wasn't, gonna advance out of A-ball, just based on the fact that I was playing maybe once a week, and not getting the at bats that I would need to continue to develop. But that said, I mean, looking back, I'm just so grateful that I had that opportunity. And, going through that frustration of not playing, at the time, it stings really bad, but it also, shapes who you are. And at the time, you don't ever see it, but now you look back and like, that made me pretty tough. I'm glad that I went through it. So long story short, you go through short-term pain to get long-term gain.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Army baseball program and how many guys have gotten that chance to play in the minor leagues. And I'm thinking Chris Riley he pitched for the Blue Jays, right, and got a couple wins for the Blue Jays. I believe I think he was the first Army player in a while to factor in a decision in Major League. Might have been the first, and I think he was still playing as of maybe last pre-pandemic, was still playing in the minor leagues, looking for another shot. Yeah, so it's really great to see not only success happen for Army football players, but Army baseball players too. Now, what are you up to now? What is Josh Holden doing these days?
Yeah, I live. I moved to Austin, Texas during the pandemic. Decided that I want to live in the snow in Cleveland, like you are up in Jersey right now.
Yeah.
I work for a medical device company, and life is good, man. I'm doing fine, and just I'm enjoying. I know that this pandemic has been pretty tough on everybody, but it's also been a good opportunity to really kind of step back and understand what's important and who's important, and reconnecting with my friends and the ball players from West Point's been really cool, and we've been intentional about doing that, so it's been good.
No doubt. I see on Instagram there's a lot of lifting. There's a lot of lifting photos and videos. You're still in good shape, ready to make another run, right? I mean, talk about that.
Yeah, man. I started getting into Olympic weightlifting over the last 6 months. So if you're not familiar, it's the snatch and the clean and jerk, and it's just a lot of fun to compete with that and see how good you can get. And people seem to respond on Instagram, so I keep posting videos. People keep looking at them and liking them, so it's been fun.
Is that something that you pursue competition in, or is that something that you're just doing for fun?
For fun right now. I'm thinking about competing. I'm 40 years old, so I don't want to break myself in half. But yeah, I mean, I think it'd be something cool to pursue here for sure.
Nice. So how closely do you follow Army football these days? And if you do follow it closely, what do you think about what they were able to do in the 2020 season and what the future holds for the Black Knights?
Yeah, man. Every Army football player follows Army football. I think the last time we spoke was 2014, which is pretty sad, actually.
Yeah.
But I think that the program has really sort of found its groove. Obviously, they have a great leader in Jeff Monken. They've been able to recruit to their system very, very well. I think that sort of being less in national conflicts has helped recruiting a little bit. And I also think that they've been intentional about the schedule and making it so that we're not playing, Alabama and Michigan week after week. I don't know if you remember in Conference USA when we were in there at the time. It was a different conference than it is today. And you had Southern Miss, you had Louisville, you had Memphis. Those were good teams. Those were top 25 talent teams. I mean, week in and week out, we had to face those guys. And, we didn't have kind of the nutrition program and the weightlifting program that these kids have today. And I don't want to sound like, we walk, uphill to school both ways. But
yeah,
they've really kind of cracked the code on how to make the program competitive, but still, maintain the West Point experience for those kids, which has been awesome.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on that, the Conference USA days, right? When wow, East Carolina was in there too, right?
I mean we were playing Dave Ragone from Louisville, and then next week we played David Garrard from East Carolina. It was just like the gauntlet, man.
Yeah, I wonder how Army's defense of 2020 would have done on that schedule. I don't know. I wonder how they would have done. I mean, they had a great year defensively, no doubt, this past year. I'm sure they would have been up to the challenge, and Nate Woody would have devised some scheme to stop those quarterbacks. But it's a different time, right? It's a completely different time in college football. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think about them defensively this year?
I'll tell you what, man, they really brought the wood. Every time I watched a game, it just seemed like they had the hats in the right places, which speaks to the coaching staff and their ability to not only have the right scheme, but to have the right personnel. And you can see that the recruiting is really kind of taken hold, and kids are now very interested in West Point as a place where not only to get a top-notch education, but also, have a great Division I football experience. And if they're good enough, they can play in the league now. There's no issue with it. So I think that, it has to do, and there's a lot of moving parts there. There's the academy leadership, there's the coaching staff, there's, getting the right kids. So it just makes me so proud that the program is where it is today. And I think I can speak for all West Pointers that, it's certainly a big source of pride when they go out and they find ways to beat Air Force and beat Navy in close games, which, we just weren't able to do for such a long time. And it's amazing. It's awesome.
Commander-in-Chief's trophy, right? 3 of the last 4 years. And, now it's almost become like, it's past the expectation. Now it's just like, it stays here. I remember Bryce Holland a couple of years back saying, we don't want to lose this trophy staying here. We don't want to, this is where it belongs. And I think that's what, look at the leadership, not only from the coaches, but the players, right? Because there's got to be like that in the locker room leadership from the players, from your seniors. And Coach Munkin talked a lot about the senior class this year, about how they kind of pick, especially during this year, where you just don't know if you're even going to play a game at the end of the week. What are you practicing for? You hope a game, but wow, I can't believe what their schedule was all mixed up, right? And they come up with 9 wins out of it, and we're into it.
Well, I would argue that those kids have gone through more than any of us ever did, just by virtue of just the uncertainty and not really knowing if you're going to be playing. I mean, to be able to motivate yourself and stay ready to play. I mean, that's such a testament to those seniors. I mean, they just did such an amazing job, and I mean, we're just proud of them, man.
Yeah. Now you look at the 2021 schedule was released this week, and you see Wisconsin on the schedule. At Wisconsin, you see Wake Forest come into Michie Stadium. And then people are saying, easy schedule, but then Ball State and Liberty were ranked at the end of the final AP rankings this year and have returned a lot of talent. So, those are programs that, Liberty, is on the rise, and Ball State's been a pretty consistent team in the MAC. So, I mean, it's not going to be easy for Army this year, but you got to get 9 wins. How do you top 9 wins?
I would love to talk to that person that said this is going to be an easy schedule, because it's never easy. Ever. And you're right. I mean, we're going to Camp Randall, then we have, Wake Forest right after that. And then Air Force is always going to be a tough game.
Yeah.
And then they got to go to Dallas for that. And I mean, it's going to be tough. But I think that, like we were talking about earlier, they've just conditioned this program so well to face adversity and to overcome it, that now it's like, bring on Wisconsin, bring on those big programs. And we can compete, so it's amazing.
I think that 2021 coming up the season, I think Coach Munkin's a little bit tired of competing against those teams. He wants to beat those teams, right? I mean, because they've been so close against Oklahoma and Michigan. And even you look at the bowl game against West Virginia, a notch below Michigan and Oklahoma, but still a Power 5 team from a pretty good conference. They're right there. Now they got to win one of these games, and maybe this is the year. Josh, all the talent they have returned. There weren't a lot of seniors that played on this team this year. They were mostly offensive line, a couple guys on defense. I mean, there's a lot of returning guys coming back, and those guys are no doubt going to be hungry. And I've always said, what's next? You go, the season passes, and what can they do? What can they do to be better than the year before? I've always said, well, how about undefeated season? I mean, 2021 would be tough, right? And by the way, the person that was on social media saying that their schedule wasn't tough, of course, was a Navy fan. Of course, was a Navy fan who has to go through that rigorous, American Athletic Conference schedule. So, of course, it was a Navy fan that.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, take it what you want with that. So, man, it's been great catching up, dude. I really appreciate the time, and great talking about your journey through Army to the military to a little bit of minor league baseball for the Reds, and now what you're doing now in the medical field. Really appreciate it, Josh. Thanks for joining us. Great talking to you.
Yes, it's great to see you again, and hopefully we don't go 6 years without talking the next time.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again soon. And like I said, you're welcome, as a co-host anytime you want. Pick a topic and we'll go with it. So
appreciate that, man.
Thanks a lot. You've been watching.
Thank you for listening to the Black Knight Nation podcast with your host, Sal Interdonato. For more information on your Army Black Knights, visit BlackKnightNation.com. And be sure to subscribe, follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast app.